have not met me, I am Carrie Clogie, the chapter president for Quad Cities. I appreciate you joining us here today. And I have Tom with MākuSafe, who is going to give us all the wonderful benefits of his wearables and how those could possibly be benefiting your organization. So Tom, I'm going to hand it over to you for introductions. Again, I'll be monitoring chat, so if you have questions, feel free to throw them in there, and then I may interject if it's important at the time. Otherwise, we have a Q&A at the end.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Carrie. It's a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you very much for having me. MākuSafe is a member here of our Hawkeye chapter of ASSP. We try to be very active in our chapter, and we do an awful lot of speaking and events, the ASSP national event, as well as state safety conferences and the like. So pleasure to be with you. I'm vice president here at MākuSafe, and we're based in Des Moines, Iowa, so not too terribly far away from everyone. I've got a bit of an overview here. We're going to talk today about a little bit about our technology, but about how wearable safety technology can be a very unique way to deliver EHS leading indicators very easily that are actionable, and some evidence about the impact we're having in industry, how we're reducing incidents and claims. We'll talk a little bit about the type of leading indicator data that we're gathering. We'll talk a little bit about employee privacy issues, important considerations, I think, if you're contemplating or have considered deploying wearable technology. We'll talk a little bit about how we're using machine learning and artificial intelligence to make the job of safety leadership and safety management a little bit easier. And I'll share some case studies with you, which is kind of exciting for us. You know, MākuSafe was founded about 8 years ago, almost 2016. And, you know, for 6-7 years now, I've been doing an awful lot of speaking. And at the very outset, we were talking about the potential that the concept of using technology to keep people safe could have. But now we've got numerous case studies and clients globally that are putting out their own reports and their own white papers. So I'm happy to be able to share those with you. And I'm happy that we're providing a solution, a tool that is being used by safety professionals to help them achieve greater results. We're being used now, I think, on 4 continents around the world, across a variety of industries, from logistics and warehousing and transportation to construction sites, all kinds of manufacturing, with workers in the field, remote workers, route drivers, as well as workers who go to a facility every day. So I'm excited to share a bit about that with you. But first, let me start with a big thank you to all of you. I'm not a safety professional. I'm not a practitioner. I came from the world of leadership development and HR. I was a college management professor for almost 30 years, but our entire MākuSafe organization has an awful lot of appreciation for what all of you do every day to keep people safe. With that said, I don't know that I would necessarily want to be you today. Today's challenges are many, and I think you're probably being asked to shoulder responsibility for things like better understanding where risk exists and how do you become more proactive and preventative. How do you develop participation, engagement, and contribute to a more positive organizational culture? How can organizations, including the safety function, become more strategic and more data-driven? How do you sell the ROI of safety upwards within your organization and cross-functionally to production and operations professionals? How do you make sure you know about things that are probably happening, but nobody bothers to tell you about. All of those things probably sound very familiar. This alphabet soup, if you haven't heard it yet, I'm guessing you will certainly sometime soon, but safety is being engaged and becoming more and more responsible for ESG, environment, social governance, being responsible for workplace violence, inclusion efforts within organizations, and you probably have started to hear about total worker health. Um, how do you optimize your safety management process? And you're probably thinking about, what can I do that can help me achieve all of these things that is not going to waste my time and resources? We all have limited resources and limited time. And what technology or tools are out there that can help without making my life more difficult? I don't have time to try and fail. So those are some of the things I want to share with you. And I guess I'll kind of start here. Traditionally, historically, the safety management profession has looked like this, right? Involving the tasks or the functions of identifying and observing hazards, um, assessing risk, and then implementing controls. And I want to share with you how that is evolving. Uh, there's emerging, thought leadership in the safety world, new thinking, new tools, new approaches to safety management, and it's time for everyone, and it's time for the profession, I believe, to begin to evolve. So I want to share with you a little bit about how our tool works and the thinking behind it, but also some considerations about how you manage safety. Um, at a fundamental level, MākuSafe can be a very, very powerful tool for identifying risks and hazards proactively and preventatively. And our company really was formed with this idea in mind that in every work environment, in every job site, in every facility, there are clues to the potential risks and hazards that people face in doing their jobs there. These are sometimes referred to as leading indicators. You probably call them near misses or good catches or observations. And this idea that we can now harness the power of technology to collect those leading indicators, those data points automatically, very easily, and harness cloud computing and machine learning and artificial intelligence in real time so that we can do analytics behind the scene and present to safety professionals these trends that have predictive value about what kinds of risks exist and who is facing them and where they're occurring. In fact, I came up with this idea some time ago when I was listening to a debate about the characteristics of leading indicators. So this acronym of TRUE, true leading indicators, I think is kind of important. In order to be useful for you, these have to be timely, no better than real time. They have to be relevant to keeping people safe and common risks and hazards. They have to be unique. You're not gathering them somewhere else. And it should be easy and economical. And that's something that we're striving to do within delivering our solution at MākuSafe. And with that, now we can use data to close the loop on the safety management process, if you will. So the same functions still occur. We're still trying to identify hazards, as many of them, and as early as we can. We do some analysis. We want to implement controls, but the age-old question of how do we know that we mitigated that risk? Being answered by the common answer historically, which was, well, nobody else got hurt. So I think we solved the problem. Now we're able to use data to close that loop and have evidence that we have eliminated that hazard or mitigated that risk. And in addition to that, we can impact positively organizational culture, safety mindset, engagement of people on the front lines, and some other things that we'll talk a little bit more about as we progress. So I want to share with you a definition of human and organizational performance that I find useful. If you haven't heard about HOP, H-O-P, you probably should. This definition will tell you a little bit about why I think human and organizational performance is a risk-focused operating philosophy. Hopefully that doesn't sound to you like just another program or a standard. This is top down. This is an organizational operating philosophy. It should become a part of your culture that you're risk focused. And this includes recognition that people make mistakes. To error is human. And that an organization's processes and systems greatly influence the decisions and the actions that our frontline workers take on a daily basis. In other words, it's natural. We know people are going to make mistakes, and we often put them in the context that forces them to make decisions about what they should do and ask them to stay safe at the same time. So consequently, their likelihood of success is dependent upon that. I wonder how many of the audience have seen this before. If you haven't, then I'm happy to share it with you. This is not an idea that I've come up with, but I think was probably originated by Todd Conklin and Bob Edwards and a couple of other thought leaders several years ago. But it's this concept of work as imagined, work in a perfect world versus what work in reality actually looks like. So if you follow that black line, that's work as imagined, work on paper, right? Work in a perfect world. But we all know that work on an everyday basis doesn't look like that. Instead, it looks like the blue lines, right? Workers adapting to solve problems, to meet the requirements of doing work, to meet the constraints that we've put them under. Maybe they're short staffed, or maybe there's a production quota that is important. And we know that this hazard line also exists, right? I mean, most of the time we know where it is approximately, but work in reality is all over the place. And hopefully we don't cross that catastrophe line. What we're trying to do here, the idea is that we can re-engineer work in reality to keep people away from hazards. We can create capacity in order for them to fail safely, even on a bad day. And I think that we contribute to that in a very, very large way. This idea of human and organizational performance, of learning more about work in reality, and about creating capacity for work in reality to not cross that hazard line. So here's some questions that I hear all the time from people in industry. We're a learning organization. We learn every day, and we have great conversations and great input from people like you. And I think some key considerations for finding tools that can help you manage safety more effectively are, knowing in advance what you're trying to achieve, knowing where your gaps are, evaluating or even asking a vendor to help you understand how this will close gaps. Is this a good fit for our organization? Do we have the kind of organizational culture that allows us to deploy a solution like this? Is this implementation, is the deployment simple? Is it easy to use for leaders? Is it easy to use for frontline workers? Does it provide insights that we aren't able to get somewhere else? Are they actionable? Is this leading indicators? Can this have a positive impact on our people? And is it trackable so that we can see results and report that results upward within the organization? And I think we do that to a great degree. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share with you some of the benefits that we're seeing in the field. And again, we provide a solution. It's really the users of our solution that are reporting these results. So this is as unbiased as I can possibly be, but we're certainly seeing across the board a reduction in accidents and incidents and claims. We work with a lot of insurers, and we're able to see pre-MAkuSafe and post-MAkuSafe, and claims frequency and claim severity are down dramatically from 50 to 90%. We stop counting when ROI gets unbelievable. But our solution is incredibly accessible and very cost effective. If the National Safety Council's number is that a typical slip that requires time away from work might cost $46,000 in direct and indirect costs, we can cover hundreds of people for multiple years for that amount of money. If we just prevent one incident, it's more than paid for itself. There's all kinds of human capital positive impact as well. Increased transparency and better communication and positive culture building, more near misses and good catches being reported. We're uncovering unknowns because the power of data being collected allows it to be studied. We're making life easier on a daily basis for safety leaders. And we're improving the effectiveness and the efficiency of safety and health management systems. So hopefully all of that stuff sounds interesting and informative to you. I'd like to paint a little picture in your mind about how our approach looks, what our solution looks like. Envision, if you will, a worker coming into your facility at the beginning of the day or beginning of their shift. You'll see here a wall-mounted kiosk. We call that our base station. It has got a keypad at the bottom, and a worker simply enters a unique number, a unique identifier, could be an employee ID number, and one of the wearable devices in that kiosk will flash green. That device is now paired with them for the day or for their shift or until they return it. Um, this is what it looks like in an organization where we have hundreds of workers. These can all be linked together. They can be spread around various entry and exit points, so there's no waiting at shift change. And you'll notice the worker here is inserting that into an armband worn holster like the one I'm wearing here. In fact, I'll take a moment here just to hold one up to the camera. And you can see this bit of electronics is separate from the armband, so that doesn't have to be shared. And this is about the size of my thumb. So this device is assigned to the worker. They can return it at the end of their shift, and it can actually be worn by somebody on the next shift. So you don't need one for every worker. Now that wearable device is using sensor technology to gather data about experiences and exposures and report that data in real time back through our ecosystem. And it goes to our cloud computing platform that we call MākuSmart, which is enterprise grade. And it shows up on any device in a dashboard for safety leaders so that you have a finger on the pulse of what's happening in your organization right now with the employees that are relevant to you. So you're probably asking, okay, what kind of data are we talking about here? We call this little device the MākuSafe Ally. And I have a wide array of sensors named here on this slide. But let's go through the four basic kinds or four categories, types of data that we're gathering. I want to start in the bottom right-hand corner there. We're doing an awful lot of monitoring of environmental conditions around the worker. Something as simple as ambient temperature and ambient humidity allows us to calculate a real-time heat index for every individual worker, regardless of where they are. Carrie and I might be on two different sides of a piece of equipment, but in close proximity to one another. And on one hand, I might be experiencing high heat index, but she may be experiencing on the other side of the machine high sound dosage, maybe poor air quality from exhaust. So these environmental conditions are now unique to the worker's experience. They're personalized, if you will. We're a full noise dosimeter. We're monitoring sound in 7 different octaves and calculating a real-time weighted average of sound exposure for each worker. We're generating notifications to a team leader or a safety leader when these things are crossing generally accepted thresholds. And you can opt in or opt out for those notifications, depending on how important they may be to you. We're even monitoring low light or no light levels, which might impact productivity and might impact worker fatigue. Now, in addition to that, we couple that with, on the left-hand side, motion detection, right? Monitoring of potentially hazardous human movement. And we started down this path wanting to understand what a slip was, and is that different from a trip, is that different from a fall? And now in real time, within seconds, we can return an answer that says we're highly confident, 98% sure this was a trip, it wasn't a slip, it wasn't a fall. We can do the same thing for repetitive motion signatures. We can do the same thing for forceful exertion, pushing and pulling and twisting and turning. So individual occurrences might require response. Like, there have been 3 slips in the loading dock just this morning and it's only noon. I might want to go observe that before somebody falls and gets hurt. But we're also gathering data over time, and we're aggregating what we call worker physicality, the amount of effort being expended to do work over time. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. We identify the location, not of people, but the location of where these indicators are occurring, so that we have some awareness of the space in which people are experiencing these things. You could think of this like dropping a pin on a Google map. So over time, trends and patterns begin to emerge. We also have an understanding of worker proximity to other workers and worker proximity to other connected things, other systems or equipment. It could be as simple as a card reader door lock, could be, a big piece of machinery that is IoT enabled. We can see worker interaction with things. And then last but not least, there's a button in the middle of the device, which is very unique. We call that our My Voice capability. That enables a worker to push that button and speak into the device to report near misses and good catches via voice. Without ceasing productivity, they can push to talk. And those voice memos, if you will, show up in that dashboard for safety leaders in real time within seconds. You get a playable audio recording, which is very, very good quality. You also get a voice to text transcription. So I think it's important in the same breath maybe to point out the things that hopefully you're realizing we're not doing here. There are no sensors that are looking inward at the worker. We're not monitoring anything that's biometric like heart rate or anything else. There's no PII, no personal data being gathered. Instead, we're looking outward for things that are being experienced that impact work. We're also not delivering any negative feedback to the worker, no buzzers or bells or whistles, because quite simply, nobody really wants to wear that kind of thing if they're constantly being buzzed. And further, we don't assume that the worker or worker behavior is the problem that needs to be solved. They may not know what to do to correct a problem, like in the case of improper lifting. And it can be a nuisance. And lastly, we're not tracking people here, we're tracking indicators. And if that really can be shared with the frontline workforce, what we're doing, what we're not doing, how this data will be used, what we've learned, let's say in the last month, and what we're doing about it to keep you safe, then there's worker receptiveness. So all of this data goes to our cloud-based platform. As I mentioned, this is just a static view, but we'd be happy to show you what the live dashboard looks like. If there's anything that's noticeable about this, I would hope that it's data that's grouped together by type of thing that's happening, type of hazard identified, or type of data. There are really large numbers. There's an awful lot of color coding going on here. If you see something in red on any screen, you can touch and begin to drill into that and find out what people are experiencing. who is involved, where it occurred, what time it occurred. And there's an awful lot of reporting that with a touch or with a click, you can automatically generate and begin to mitigate problems, address hazards, and implement controls proactively and preventatively. Talking with your people who are facing these things in their work about what they're experiencing. So, let me give you a few examples of how this is being implemented. I talked an awful lot about environmentals, noise and heat exposure and air quality and light levels. That data being gathered all the time is sometimes surprising to organizations who feel as though they may have some of these things covered. Being able to touch a screen and drill into the locations of where things are occurring, even without having seen this before, I imagine you're probably wondering what's happening in those two locations of our facility that are shaded red. With a touch, I can begin to drill into those things. Organizations, in our neck of the woods here, you're probably maybe familiar with White's Construction. They put out their own white paper. To their credit, they're using our solution as a tool in achieving great results. And it's with pride that I'm able to tell you, though I wasn't involved, that we're being used on multiple data center construction projects, which are just gigantic. They're multi-employer job sites as well, which is, a compounded difficulty. And on all of these multiple sites, they've been able to attain and retain a zero recordable rate based on using the data that they're finding from our wearable devices. That's a tremendous achievement, and they're continuing to work with us and grow and scale up. Further, I think it's important to note that they're taking their safety record and they're reporting it to their clients as a general contractor, and they're winning more and more projects, more and more business because of their innovative use of safety technology and the results that they're achieving. So that's great for them. And that case study is available on our website if you have interest. With regard to motion and physicality, you see this worker and some data here. I sometimes refer to this as the Chiclets bar or the Skittles bar, but these color-coded squares, each one of them represents a day of work in terms of the amount of effort being expended on those days. And you can see here something that's very typical for us. Danny, over the course of the first 2 weeks of the month, was shaded all red and orange on days that he worked. In fact, he was ranked #1 at his site, even though everybody in his department is doing the same work with the same tools. That raises an awful lot of questions. What's Danny doing differently, or what are the others doing differently? And based on that data, we have client organizations that are really in tune with this. And all supervisors, all leaders are going to have a conversation with Danny or observe what he's doing or how he's doing it. And what we see when that happens is all of those daily indicators of physicality of work turn back to blue or green, because of changes that have been made to alleviate that strain, that exertion. Sometimes that's not the worker doing something wrong, but rather a change in workstation design, getting things up off the floor, that kind of thing. Maybe Danny in this case is shorter than everybody else who works in his department. So this Motion Explorer feature that we call it allows, even with a click, the stack ranking of workers within a particular job role or department. And you can slice and dice this however you'd like. But another case study I'll share with you, and in this particular instance, an insurer was involved. What they were able to see in a very high volume pick, pack, ship, warehousing, and distribution operation was within less than 12 months, they were able to reduce strain and exertion injuries by 56%. I think their record now is higher, but they're using MākuSafe on multiple job sites, and their insurer quantified that as at least a $450,000 savings in work comp claims per site in their first year. So that loss avoidance story is a very, very big deal. Now, that my voice reporting feature that I mentioned earlier, the ability for a worker to push a button, they have to do it intentionally. It doesn't happen by accident, but their ability to report anything from their perspective on the front lines. It could be, near misses or good catches. I hear things all the time, like I'm back here in a dark corner of the warehouse and somebody dropped a pallet in a walkway, or machine number 3 on the line is leaking fluid on the floor. It could be maintenance requests, could be tool needs in order to do their jobs correctly. Could just be observations. You're probably going to want to come out here and see this. You may not like it. And when those reports are paid attention to by leadership, by team leaders, they can have a dramatic impact as well. Here's another case study where this organization reduced lost time injuries by 74% in their first year. And what they were also able to document is that constant stream of feedback from the front lines was important to them. And based on their culture surveys, they're able to see a dramatic improvement in cultural impact documented with their frontline workers. So again, significant results that are being achieved by implementing our tool. In this case, this organization was really only concentrating focus on a couple of types of data and making changes as a result of that. We even do this for remote workers now, the ability for a worker to check out a wearable device, to pair that with a company issued smartphone using an app, and then be able to send real-time data through cellular networks if they're working in the field or on a route. So if you're following the logic here, we're not only able to see what's happening in that around that worker in the middle, what they're experiencing and what they're exposed to, that individual. Thanks to the pandemic, we also did an awful lot of hard work to be able to understand proximity between workers wearing these devices and make that available with just a click. This may not be our last pandemic, but that certainly put us on a path so that we're able to see something that may be even more important, which is worker interaction with the connected things and pieces of equipment around them. In this case, maybe that fork truck is IoT enabled, and we want to see if this worker, before they're allowed to activate that forklift, powered industrial vehicle, has the credentials that allows them to work on it or to operate it. We can do that, and we can do that in real time. So this capability we call MākuSafe Interact, the ability to see the now connected worker and their interaction with other factory systems and equipment around them. And I might be dating myself just a little bit. I use this in presentations from time to time, but hopefully many of you remember the I Love Lucy episode where Lucy and Ethel went to work in a chocolate factory, right? It's quite humorous, kind of legendary, because after training, the production line begins to move so fast that they can't keep up with wrapping these chocolates. And they start to, of course, stuff them in their mouths and stuff them under their hat. What I didn't remember about this episode is that there's a safety poster right behind them. They had just completed orientation, and the leader walked away. So they're unsupervised, and the production operation began to run out of control, which is not only an efficiency impact, but it's also a safety impact to those workers. And now we realize that these concerns don't exist in silos. safety and efficiency and productivity not only are interrelated, they're interdependent. If your organization wants to be as productive and as efficient as possible, it also needs to be as safe as possible. So MākuSafe Interact allows us to visualize some little bits of data that seem very simple, like who, where were they, when did they arrive, what are they interacting with, how long have they been there, what are their credentials, and yet that has significant benefits in this ever increasingly connected smart factory or automated manufacturing environment. It allows us more control. It allows us to control or restrict access. It has an impact on being able to study productivity and improve productivity. It has cost accounting benefits and certainly an impact on safety. So, by now monitoring the worker's presence and what pieces of equipment they're interacting with. We use that little device, by the way, that's in the bottom right-hand corner there, which is really just another wearable device in a box. But now we can hook that up to equipment in addition to people wearing it. And we can see all kinds of relevant data, area scans, in organizations where workers are constantly being pulled from one line to another. Sometimes just understanding where those workers are, who's available, and what location they're in can have tremendous impact on cost savings and productivity. So if we're really interested in understanding what work in reality looks like, what work on good days and bad days look like, not just work on paper in a perfect world, this can help us do that. And we can re-engineer work in order to keep people safe in the long run and away from that catastrophe line. So this not only is an advantage for safety professionals, but also for operations and production organizations that are heading in this direction. So that's a little bit about what we're doing and how our solution works. Some common, I think, questions that people have. It's far cry from 6 or 7 years ago when I was explaining what wearable technology meant. Now most people have heard about that. And instead they're interested, I hear, on a regular basis about how we might implement this, or what really will it do for us, or what's the reaction of the workers going to be like if we ask them to wear this. So that's a little bit about MākuSafe and a little bit, I think, about how safety management is evolving, if you will. There's more data that I've put QR codes or reports that may be of interest to you here on the slide. I'll leave that up for a couple of minutes. And if you happen to be going to the Iowa Illinois Safety Council PDC Professional Development Conference, which is in Coralville, I'm speaking there specifically on HOP, Human and Organizational Performance, on April 24th. So with that, Carrie, let me ask you, have any questions come in?
I have a question before I start. One of the things, this is countrywide, is just for companies to be able to find workers to come in and work. What do you think the impact is for a company if they're using this IoT on emerging folks into the workplace who are used to being around all that technology? What kind of impact do you think that has as far as if a company can say and show a potential candidate for a job that they're using this kind of equipment?
Yeah, so that's an issue that is near and dear to my heart and really in my wheelhouse, given my experience and my background. I'll ask you this, what do you think the single number one reason is that people leave their jobs? And the answer is 10 times more important than pay. It's actually lack of recognition, which really equates to leadership. And that my voice reporting feature that we talked about, allowing people to report things from their perspective, can really have a large impact on this. If leadership, if management shows that they're interested and appreciates the input from the front lines, that can really be key in retention of talent and attraction of a workforce. So I think our technology is very, very human centric in that it's not tracking people. We're not interested in holding people accountable. This isn't going to be used, in a nefarious way, but rather if an organization's leadership team, and we see this all the time, if they have the ability and they created the culture and they're willing to share what we're learning and what we're doing about it to keep you safe, then that's the kind of thing that keeps employees there, allows them to feel like they're being heard, and attracts talent, especially in this, war for talent that we're facing.
Yeah, and employees just having a chance to have a voice that they maybe have not, just because they feel whatever their position is in the company. It's just, and being able to be heard and seen, right? That's what humans want. They want that opportunity, so maybe that they can actually make a difference.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll give you an example. I've been at boardroom tables where we're, meeting a leadership team and management team, executives sometimes at this organization, and we talk about this feature, and someone, will voice the opinion that, what we're going to hear. People are going to push that button and tell us that there's no Coke in the Coke machine. And I've heard CEOs slap the table and say, if that's what's on their mind, that's what I want to know. And I want you to fix it, right? Let's get rid of that. That should be easy. But what we're really trying to do is build a culture of people voicing what's really on their mind. And we ask those questions, but in a large way, we don't get as much response as we'd like, right? So this can really fuel that frontline worker input and perspective, make people feel included and appreciated.
Makes sense. John Hauser, you have a question. Do you want to pose that? Well, I'll ask it for him. Does the voice message alert anyone, or is it just in the cloud to be accessed, to be accessed later?
Yeah, really good question. So any of those types of data that we're collecting can be organized by team, by department, by work group, and therefore the supervisor of that department, the safety leader who's responsible for this facility, can opt in for notifications that are relevant to them. In large organizations, you wouldn't want to be inundated with notifications about everything that's happening company wide, but you definitely want to know what's happening with your team of people. So you can opt in for notifications for any particular group or team or department that you're responsible for. And those notifications can come to you even on your smartphone via push notifications, text messages. They have a link in them. Touch the link on your phone, it goes right to the dashboard. So, we recommend, especially when clients are getting started, you can't pay attention to everything. You'll be able to, dive into the data. It's always saved when you have time, or maybe somebody at a corporate level wants to look at, large sets of data. But you should definitely opt into people leaving you a voice memo, a voice report of something they think is important. We believe it's important to respond to those. Maybe slips, trips, and falls, because that's critical, and other things that are directly relevant. Like if it's summertime in the Midwest, I want to know when people are experiencing high heat index, so that we don't have a one size fits all approach to when they need to take breaks or get hydration or shade.
Okay, that's great. Anyone have any other questions? Good. Okay, well, thanks again, Tom, for your time, and all the participants. Hope you've learned something valuable, some gold nugget you can take away with you. Tom, I'm going to share the actual recording. Are you able to share your PowerPoint as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I will send it
Okay.
to you once we conclude.
All right. Thank you, everyone. You have a great day.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.